In this video, we're going to talk about the basics of lighting and how it affects your final picture. Now let me know if you can identify with this and stop me if you can't. So you search on YouTube for months, maybe years, and you finally found a camera that you wanted. You buy it, it comes to your door, you put it all together, but for some reason, you just can't get the same picture that other YouTubers are getting out of the same camera you just bought. And now you're thinking to yourself,
oh boy, I'm just a failure with nothing to lose or gain.
I'm Mr. Motivation, and I'm here to give your sorry self a boost in confidence with these 3 tips. Tip number 1, pick your head up, little buddy, and stop being an idiot. You must take time to learn if you want to grow. And number 2, don't be a clown. Have some respect for yourself and stop whining. Whining doesn't change anything, but having a desire to learn does. And tip number 3, stop letting your silly little thoughts interrupt this video. You are a clown. Now, if you're not getting the picture you want, then more than likely the problem is going to be lighting. Now, right about now, you may be thinking, I don't feel like learning all this stuff about lighting. But let me tell you, lighting is not that complicated once you get the basics down, and that's what I'm gonna help you with in this video. You may have heard things like sit next to a window or get yourself a ring light, or just go to Home Depot and buy a light and turn it on and point it directly at your face, no matter if it's 1,000 degrees and you can't breathe, because at least you have a light, right? Well, the problem with these suggestions is that they may not always work. Instead, you need a constant solution that's always reliable 100% of the time, especially if you're doing things like this, like talking heads. So now you may be asking yourself, well, how do I get a consistent lighting setup that's reliable? Well, I'm glad you asked. But first, let me dispel some common myths about lighting. The first myth is that lights need to be expensive. And the truth is, lights don't have to be expensive to look good. In fact, there are a lot of lights available on the market that you can get, and if they're paired correctly, like with a good softbox, then you can get really good results. Now, one light I recommend is the P80S. Now, this is an 80-watt light that I use for the majority of my videos here on the internet. And if you combine that with a softbox, you can get some really great results. And I'll put the links to all of the equipment I talk about in the description below. Now, the other good thing about this light is that you can control it with an app from your phone. So you can turn it on and off, adjust the intensity of the light as well. Now, this is a daylight balance light, meaning that it's going to give you the color temperature similar to what you would see outside. Now, if you pair this with a softbox like the good old Godox P90L, then you can come out with some very great looking videos like this right here. Now, the second myth about lighting is that you need to know a lot about lights in order to get good lighting in your videos. And this is simply not the case. All it takes is setting up your light once, and then you can forget it, and it'll be reliable for you time after time after time, as long as you don't move anything or change anything. Now, the third myth is that you need a bunch of lights to get a good picture, but the truth is you actually only need one light placed very well and set correctly to get a good shot. Now, if you want to add lights, that's okay, as it can enhance your overall look, but is definitely not a requirement in order to get good looking video. Now, the last and final myth, I guess that's the same thing, but the last myth is that lighting needs to make your video look dramatic. But the point of lighting is to make sure that your subject can be clearly seen while being separated from the background. And no, it doesn't hurt to add some flash and flare to that. You can totally do that, but just know that it's not a requirement. So now that you have some of the myths out of the way, let's look at a basic 3-point lighting setup. Now, if you've done any research on lighting, then you've probably heard the term 3-point lighting. The 3-point lighting is 3 different lights that are set up in order to get a well-rounded picture. One main light in front of the subject and another off to the side and one behind the subject. Now, the first light in your setup is your key light. The key light is your main light, and it provides the majority of the light needed in order to properly expose your video. Now, this light is generally going to be bigger and brighter than the other 2 lights in your group. Now the second light is called the fill light, and this light does exactly what it sounds like. It fills in the dark areas that the key light was not able to fill. Now what makes the fill light special is that it doesn't actually have to be a light. It could simply be a piece of material that bounces light from the key light onto your subject. Now the third and final light in the setup is the backlight. The backlight's process is to separate the subject or yourself from the background. Now without the backlight, your subject will blend into the background and it will look flat and boring, and no one wants that. Unless that is what you want, then you could do it by not adding a backlight. Now listen, you don't need a 3-point lighting setup, but I just wanted to go over it so you have an idea of what it is and you have an understanding of how it works. Now I do recommend starting with at least one light to begin with, and that way you can get the basics down, and then you can add lights later on and build until your whole setup is exactly the way you want it, or until your knowledge grows. So at this point, you may be asking, okay, so how do I just get this one light set up? Well, I'm glad you asked. The key to setting up one light is the placement of the light and the diffusion of the light and the intensity of the light. These three things are really important to get a great picture. Now let's start with the placement of the light. The placement of the light is going to tell you where the light is going to come from. For instance, if you put a light behind you, then that's where the light is going to come from. You will be backlit. Now, if you put a light on the side, look over here, then obviously the light will hit you from the side and it's going to be on the side of your face. And if you put a light right in front of you, well, it means it's going to hit you directly in your face. You're going to have light shining right in your eyeballs. Now, most lights are placed in front of the subject at a 45-degree angle and about 3 feet away from the subject's face. And the height is above eye level. So that means when you're looking at the light, you're not gonna be looking right at the center of where your light is. If you have a softbox, you'll be able to see that really easy. Now, the second part of setting up your key light is using diffusion. Now, diffusion is simply the scattering or the spreading of light evenly over your subject's face. Now, without diffusion, light is gonna be almost laser focused, and sometimes it can just look really weird and will produce hard light, and that creates and casts shadows on the face. Now, if that's the look you're going for, then cool, but most of the time, if you're looking for that cinematic or that soft look, then you're gonna wanna have diffusion that will spread the light evenly over the face. This is what they use in most movies and things like that. So if that's what you're after, then you definitely wanna get yourself a softbox or a large piece of something that can help diffuse and spread out the light. Now, one way to know if you have hard light is to look behind your subject. So if I look behind me and I see a shadow behind me on the wall, then that lets me know that my light is hard and it's hitting me very hard in the face. And that means it's not spreading evenly over my face. Now, again, I'm just giving you the rules that help you produce more of a cinematic look that everybody seems to be searching for. However, if you want that hard look, then the choice is yours to make whatever decision you want. And there's no wrong way to light it. I'm just telling you if you want a specific look. Now, the last part of setting up your key light is the intensity of the light or the brightness of your light. Now, the format for setting up the intensity of your light is gonna depend on the settings on your camera. Now, what this means is you're gonna first set your aperture and your shutter speed to determine the type of look you want. So if you want something like a blurred out background, then you're gonna wanna use a shallow depth of field. So you're gonna be shooting at something like 1.4, 2.8, or wider open with your lens. After you do that, then you adjust your light accordingly, and you could change the intensity setting on the back panel or whatever method you use to control your lights. Now, if you still don't have enough light after that, then you may want to move the light closer to you with your softbox and then adjust your ISO to get the desired look that you're looking for. Now, did you know that if you replace the W in what, when, and where with a T, you'll get the answers to all those questions? That had nothing to do with lighting, but I just wanted to make sure you were listening. Now, I'm sure you're asking, what's the best light to get? Well, I'm glad you asked. And that depends on where you're shooting and what your environment is. But I do have a couple suggestions here, and I'll put, again, like I said, in the description below. Now, the first light is the Godox SL60W. Now, this is a 60 watt daylight balance light with a CRI rating of 95 plus. Now, CRI stands for Color Rendering Index, and it's a rating of how accurate the light coming from the light is. The more accurate the light, the closer to real life objects will look on camera. Low quality light will add unnatural colors and make objects look different than what they actually look like in real life. Now the second light again is the GVM80W. Now this light is an 80 watt light and I've used in a lot of my videos here on this channel. Now the great thing about this light is you can actually control it with an app in your phone, which makes things really simple to operate. Now I'm sure that if you follow these lighting tips, you will achieve some great results. Now, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below and let me know what you think of this lighting tutorial. Now, again, this is just the basics of lighting. There's way more to lighting than just this, but I just wanted to get you guys started on the basics. So if you're doing something like a talking head, like what I'm doing, then you at least know where to start. Now, again, as long as you're getting the look that you're looking for, that's the key. And I want you to learn how light works. So don't get caught up in buying the right light and things like that. Just make sure that you understand how to get the look that you're trying to get. Now, let me know in the comments below what you think about this video and if it was helpful to you. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the comments below as well. Until next time, I'll holler at y'all later. I'm out. Peace.